ואני באלוהים חסדך ובוי ובוי בשכה אשתחווה אליך על קודשך אוי בירסך ואני באלוהים חסדך ובוי ובוי בשכה אשתחווה
Shavua Tov to everyone. As we enter this new week, we are also entering a new series, and that is the dress code for davening. And we're going to divide it up into different parts because, as you know, in many shuls, some people come to davening dressed in a shirt and pants. Some even come in a t-shirt and shorts with sandals without socks. And some, on the other hand, come with a hat, with a gartel, with a suit. And I'd like to, as much as possible, make some order in all of this. So let's begin right at the beginning. The Gemara talks about how you're supposed to come to davening, and there actually is 3 points of view in Maseches Shabbos, Daf Yud Amud Aleph 10a in Trachtei Shabbos, about how to come to davening. Number 1, Rabbi Bar Rav Huna used to come to davening with long socks. Let's put that aside a second, saying he kon likrat malachecha Yisrael, namely, you're supposed to come to davening as befitting to come before a king. On the total other hand, Rava would actually remove his cloak and clasp his hands and daven, saying that he's like a servant coming before God. So he would, in a way, downdress to show that he's a servant and not an important person and not arrogant. But finally, we have a third opinion, and that is Rav Ashi, who brings a testimony of seeing Rav Kahana coming to davening and changing his clothes based on his mood, or to be more precise, based on the needs of that day. If indeed it was a day in which there was peace in the world, he would dress up. And if it was a day that unfortunately was the opposite of peace, unfortunately sirens, maybe soldiers being killed and whatnot, he would dress down. How do we paskin on this shaila? Do we indeed say, always dress to befit a king? Do we always say, no, dress down to look like a servant? Or do we say, it depends on your mood. It depends on what the needs are. So, at the end of the day, there actually is 3 opinions on this lahalacha. Aruch HaShulchan, Rav Yechiel Michael Epstein of the 20th century, comes along and says, Klalo shel davar, this is the rule regarding dress code of davening, tzarich litpalel bibgadim sheyotzeh bahem larachov. The way you walk around in the street, that's the way you come to shul. In other words, you don't have to dress up, you don't have to dress down. The way you leave your house and go into the street is the way you're supposed to come to davening. So, in a word, you don't go into the street with an undershirt on, you go into the street with a proper shirt. Whatever you wear as pants, shorts, whatever it might be, that's the way you come to davening. Perush number 2 is the Rambam. The Rambam goes ahead and says that at the end of the day, you're supposed to come to davening in the following way. Get yourself ready with your clothes. Get yourself distinct for davening, and mehader from the word hadar, which means glorify yourself. Shene'emar, as we say in Kabbalat Shabbat, ishtachavu laHashem b'hadrat kodesh, bow before God in actual glory. Don't stand in your undershirt. V'lo berosh meguleh, without a kippah on. V'lo beraglayim megulot, and not in naked legs, or in a way, maybe even shorts. But im derech anshe hamakom shelo yamdu b'fnei gdolim bebatei raglayim. Says the Rambam, at the end of the day, all these examples come down to one thing. How do you stand before big people? Namely, he paskins like the point of view that says that you're supposed to come to davening befitting a king, and therefore, how do you come before a king? That's the way you come to davening. And therefore the Beit Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo says, She'im derech anshe hamakom la'amod yechefim b'fnei hagdolim. He understands from the Rambam that if you come before a king in shorts, like kibbutznikim do, when great people come to visit them, kemo be'eretz ha'arav, just like they do in Arabic countries, shari litpalel yachef, you can daven with shorts. V'chen nagu ha'olam b'chol eretz ha'arav litpalel yachefim. And that's exactly the custom in Arab countries, to actually daven without shoes on, because that's the way they greet kings. So the second point of view is not the way you go in the street, a little higher, glorify yourself to the way you befit a king. But that would change from place to place, and indeed the Shulchan Aruch paskins this way, exactly the words of the Rambam, and says that regarding wearing shorts, it's going to be based on where you live, and that's ultimately the point of view of the Mishnah Berurah, who says, and I quote his words, "V'hakol taloi lefi minhag hamekomot." Whatever subjectively is the way you come before important people in your locale, that's the way you should come to davening. But the third point of view is in a different Shulchan Aruch, and I'm not sure why people didn't point out that there seems to be a contradiction. I just quoted the Shulchan Aruch in chapter number 91, but in chapter 98, the Shulchan Aruch says, "V'ra'oi sheyeh lo malbashim na'im miyuchadim latfilah kemo bigdei kehuna." So it's not the clothes you go in the street like the Aruch HaShulchan. It's not the clothes to befit a king like the Rambam. Namely, you'll wear it to greet a king, but you'll also wear it for davening. No, it's special clothing just for davening, like the Bigdei Kahuna, like the priests used to have to work in the temple. And then he says a heter, if you can't afford it, at least you should have special pants for davening. I'm not sure why, at the end of the day, no one pointed out that contradiction, but you should know, it's in the book, it's in the Code of Jewish Law, you should have special clothing just for davening. So 3 points of view, halacha. Number 1, to wear what you usually wear when you go outside. Number 2, to wear clothing that befits a king, and that would change from locale to locale, of course. And number 3, to have special, unique clothing just for davening, or at least pants just for davening. At the end of the day, we probably poskin like the middle point of view. You should come to davening the way you would if an important person would visit. And indeed, the Piskei Tshuvos, which is a book written by someone who's more of a Hasidic Jew, I don't think he's suspected of being part of the modern Orthodox community. He basically says that at the end of the day, you should try to fulfill the Aruch HaShulchan together with the Rambam. Namely, Kederech halichato barechov, like you go out in the street, ve'amidato b'fnei anashim chashuvim, and adding as you would before important people. And he goes on to say that this is subjective to where you live, and therefore he says that with the greatest respect to the fact that there are people that come to davening with a jacket and hat, and that's the way they come, at the end of the day, ein biyadeinu limchot, we cannot go ahead and say they're doing something wrong. Keshem mitpalelim lelo chalifa v'kova, when they daven without a jacket and hat, va'afilu lelo garbayim, and even if they daven with sandals without socks. Why? Because that's the way they walk in the summer months. And that's the way they stand before great people. They even stand with short sleeve shirts. They even stand with shorts. So if you go to a kibbutz and say a minister comes to visit, that's the way they stand. So at the end of the day, the proper dress code for davening is subjective to where you live. Namely, if where you live to befit an important person, this is the way you would dress, that's the way you should dress for davening. If you want to be a little more mekel, then forget about an important person, at least the way you would leave your house to go out in the street.
Schäfer, die aus dem Beten davenen, oi, 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 davenen, Fadi. Ich glaube, ich sehe, was Schäfer,